We start our session of the 10th Russian Forum on Corporate Governance, ESG, from words to real actions. We would like to invite a co-founder and chairperson of the Supervisory Council of AIDA, Alexander Ikonnikov. Good afternoon. It's the first time this year we see each other personally, and it's a great feeling to see you personally rather than from the screen. And of course, feeling this powerful energy of the professionals in the room, which gives a very special feeling, is very important. I think that we'll try to transmit this energy to those who are watching us. Let us greet each other with applause. We were able to get together today, and today we have quite a busy agenda. We have accumulated our energy during the pandemic so that during the next hour and a half, talk with the leaders related to sustainable development of business and ESG. I would like to introduce the moderator of our session, Elena Dubovitskaya, Director for Corporate Governance and Sustainable Development with PwC Russia. Welcome, Elena. Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm happy to greet you today in this room. I'm happy to see you in person. Today we're going to discuss sustainable development, and we will call it ESG, environmental, social and governance issues. It is not a new topic, but it is very relevant in the recent time. We have now faced with very important issues and challenges which are important for board of directors. Today we have a great panel, and I'm very happy to share this scene with Alexander Vedyakhin, first deputy of chairman of Sberbank. I also happy to introduce Sergei Shvetsov, the first deputy of the chairman of the Central Bank of Russia, who will join us online, Anatoly Chubais, in his new position of the special representative of the president on relations with international organizations in social development and independent director of Sistema. Also, Irina Bokova, independent director of Fosagra, Tatiana Mitrova, independent director in Novatech, and Yurki Talvite, head of board member in a number of companies and ESG director in Magnit. We have our meeting both online and offline, and we have our translation in YouTube, and online listeners could choose the preferred language, and we hope that people in the room will have time so that they could ask questions. Our session is divided in a number of sections. In the first part, we are going to discuss sustainable development in terms of regulation and government. And in the second part, we are going to discuss engagement of Russian business. Sergei Anatolievich, I'm happy to greet you today. The Bank of Russia has always played an important leading role in development of the best practices of corporate governance and sustainable development in Russian companies. What is ESG for you, and what measures to stimulate such practice in Russian businesses you implement and going to implement? Thank you, Elena. Colleagues, happy to meet you. So far, I have no ability to come in person, but I believe in the nearest future we'll be able to do this. But online format also has its advantages, and I think that we will use this flexible combination for some time. Going back to ESG, really, the factor which, like a couple of years ago, we could treat it as exotic. We understood there were certain obligations in Russia related to our commitments under UN, but we mostly looked at this in terms of restrictions which our trading partners could introduce in terms of Russian goods, or probably through international finance, which were looking for some green and social investments. But currently the situation is different, and I clearly understand that there is also an internal demand of our population to protect environment, to improve social responsibility of people and businesses. What is sustainable development? It means that we achieve the current goals, not compromising the future purposes. We have to understand that business could have its financial year, which is defined, but the life is not over with such financial years. We need to leave land for the future generations so that they wouldn't just survive, but rather live comfortably. And this has been reflected in international practice and in our internal agenda, and I believe that currently ESG should be taken into account in the strategy of each company, including the regulator. Together with digitalization and cyber and new economy, it is the factor which is not a factor of the tomorrow, but rather of today. The main task of the central bank is narrower than the government, although we cooperate with the government. I would mention three main aspects: to set up a toolkit in the financial market so that each person, when cooperating with the financial market, could be engaged in ESG if such person believes that it is necessary for such person, for him or for her, to develop the society and environment. So this person could use green instruments, and we need to create such instruments so that the person could be sure that he could use the best instruments, and we need to prepare taxonomy, tools, and glossary for this person. The second factor is that the life is changing, and we have both internal and external requirements, and then the financial market should provide the toolkit for our businesses, for industries, to adjust their business models and probably making greener transformation so that they could be competitive and develop sustainably. And we need to create such tools. They are a bit different than the instruments and tools for the population, but this, in essence, it is the same, because both people and enterprises could invest in green could make green investments. That's why we need to create the toolkit, which businesses who are conscious about this agenda could treat as relevant and use the financial sector services in this way and transform themselves and their agenda in a new quality. It is also related to disclosures, because it is important for investors and for people and for the government. And the third area is the financial sector as such. We understand it clearly that climate change and change in relations with business would reshape the profile of our economy, of our borrowers, of the financial system. And it is important for us to take into account these changes in our regulation and risk assessment. Right now, we perform a thorough analysis how these risk factors should be taken into account and look at the enterprises and borrowers who make changes in their business or postpone such changes, and what could happen in business of such companies, so that financial sector could take this into account. Our regulation is some kind of a mirror which takes this into account. There could be short-term and longer-term risks, and not all the enterprises are ready to do it immediately. That's why we need to look at the future and think how we are going to respond in our regulation on to this factor, to the changing or not changing enterprises and climate change, and it will definitely be changing, and everything related to ESG. As a regulator of corporate relations, we set a separate task to develop recommendations for board members to take into account ESG factors in their strategic development of their corporations, because here we have get together here today like independent directors, and their role is very important in longer-term planning, because management would mostly rather think about shorter-term goals. And the directors are responsible for interests of stakeholders, and we increasingly more mention population as such a stakeholder, because we cannot, for example, divide the world ocean into Russian or non-Russian. That's why we need to have a common understanding of the agenda, and then we could make decisions. And it is very important to disclose information for the society. This information should be compatible and recognized by international investors, because we have more than 50% interest of foreign investment in free float, and we have to take their interests into account. So the information should be understandable and clear both to Russian and foreign investors, and we work on this. That companies need to be transparent, so that they could make further important steps in this development. And we believe that for the horizon of 3 or 4 years, we could apply this soft regulation. This is our investment, our agenda, and we believe that our working group, which engages a lot of representatives of the market, could continue working together with us and the government, first of all, the Ministry of Economy, and as a regulator, this is our competence, and we will be thoroughly engaged in this process. And it is important for us to move in the area of ESG. We are changing our internal processes too, because it is also demanded by our own people, and we need to act as a role model in this respect. Thank you. Unfortunately, I have to disconnect now. I have another event. Victoria Yurievna Stepanenko is attending the meeting, and she is a driver of ESG agenda in the central bank. That's why she will be able to handle your questions. Thank you. Thank you for this wide view to this area, and thank you for noting the role of board members in moving forward this agenda. And we would like to greet Victoria Stepanenko, and we will also have some questions to her.
So we'll pass on to discussion of ESG problems with Russian companies. But first of all, I'd like to continue reviewing and analyzing the country-by-country context to discuss the sustainable development goals and purposes. I cannot but welcome Anatoly Borisovich Chubais. He's deeply submerged in this topic. He worked a lot with this topic about sustainable development, and this has become very topical in 2020 when Russia has developed and presented the first voluntary social and sustainable growth report. So we're debating whether these goals can be achieved by the global society, by each particular country, including Russia. So I'd start with a question: how do you assess Russia's potential in achieving sustainable growth targets? What is Russia's progress in this area? Do we have a single plan for sustainable growth? We have talked about this a lot recently, and also it is important to discuss how do you evaluate the way how business can take part in implementing sustainable growth and developing sustainable development goals. So please, the floor is yours. Yelena, thank you very much. Thank you for everybody who invited me here to take part in this meeting. I think that it was a very smart move when you decided to take this topic of ESG and when you merged the ESG with the functionality of the IDA functionality and the boards of directors. I'm definitely sure that this is the institute that can be used to implement the culture of ESG into the Russian business environment. I have been tracking your association for quite a long time already. I think you are en route. In this particular case, I think that you do the right thing. I'm prepared to answer your questions, but first of all, it would be reasonable to say a couple of words about the essence. So what's the topic of the discussion? And as a response to your question, I will tell you what happens in Russia, where we are currently standing, and what shall we do next. I'll try to have 10 minutes that you allocated for me. So if we start discussing the mere essence of this topic, when I was young, when I was working with the sustainable development, I think that this topic has been topical for me for a lot of time already. Recently, in the recent 30 or 40 years, it has been developing and went through some drastic changes. This topic was first born starting from the Roman Club work. So there were some growth models that were discussed, and it is based on the ideas drawn forth by the Roman Club about the growth limits. It was in 1970s when they first started speaking about this. So it was a lot of calculations, a lot of analysis. So we saw lots of cases related to this. We even worked with Rosnano about this. We talked about things that we did well, things that we did not do well, but the mere idea is the problem of the limit of growth. So if we translate it to human language, so to say, so the tempo of the growth of the world economy in the recent 30 or 40 years, this growth cannot be unlimited. So this is what Sergei Shvetsov just said. We're starting to take resource from others. This is a fundamental problem, basically. And so when the Roman Club first started working, they said that we have got 100 years. So this was described in the book that was prepared by the president of the Roman Club. It was translated to Russian somehow in 1980s. It was called Human Qualities. So the essence of this book was that, dear friends, we cannot move on like this. Unlimited consumption, unlimited production growth are unacceptable. We should limit ourselves. We should change the man. I was a young academic worker back then. I thought that it was really very, very good target limitation for us. It would be useful, and I was really impressed by this. I thought that the way to tackle this problem, to change the man, was something that is not really tangible. We have so many people living on this globe, so it is impossible to change everybody. Looks like I was not right back then. I see that what we witness today, the relationship of the attitude of the young people to the climate change, to the environment, has been drastically changed as compared to the older generation. There have been a lot of changes. I will not give you any figures. I think that you should agree just on the basic level that the change has been there. And it is even more important that this topic, when it transferred from 2020 to 2021, it gained some momentum that you cannot stop. So it's ESG and the whole concept of business responsibility. I have a very simple understanding of this. We have lived in the situation when you had some financial responsibility of business, you have IFRS, you have financial statements, you show your performance results, and so you get some loan interest rates and get some capital. In addition to the financial construction, in addition to the financial reporting, we have a comparable concept of non-financial reporting, which means ESG. I suppose we are just one step, half step away from the non-financial liability, non-financial reporting. It will be comparable to financial reports. And sometimes it will even surpass the meaning of financial reporting. So business ratings will be integrating the financial and non-financial component. And by getting this rating, you will get some new conditions for raising loans, various multiple indicators for market capital and other things. And right now it is a different determined construction, which is rigid, which is set. It's not only about human conditions. It's a story when the businesses that really understand how to work here, they will get another quality of financial resource access. This is a very, very drastic turn. Not everybody understands this, but this is a very fundamental change. I think I should say that we are finding ourselves right now in a location when the businesses or countries who do not integrate, who don't understand this, who do not include ESG into the strategies, they will ultimately move towards a crash, or maybe they will fall back. So it's a way to the third world, and the businesses will go bankrupt if they disregard ESG. So this is really the picture that we have today. It's very simple, just like I described this. It's not about the 50 years prospect or something more. It's like 5-10 years. For sure, this will happen. Just take a look at the European Green Deal. It's not about the fact that it's 2 trillion euros. It's like Titanic mass of money. But the main thing, the main idea is that the whole technological world will change drastically and a new technical environment will get born. A very simple example of just how the existing technologies vanish. It's internal combustion engines. Today we live here and just they can vanish in all countries, in every city. This is a technology that will vanish. This is the technology that will no longer exist. You had it today and you will never have it in the future. The second example of the technologies that we do not have now, but they will come up, I think it's the hydrogen and the green hydrogen. I think it's the fundamental replacement of CO2 upon combustion of which you get some distillate water, H2O. This means that the countries who have undertook this ESG obligations will have a different technological environment, and we have got like a crossroads that where we have to take ways. So about 5 years ago, we have been saying that this will definitely happen, but the business tried to disregard this. Right now, this is happening, and the cross-border tax is just like a first sign of all of this. The climate is not local. The climate is a global thing, and the CO2 emissions and Mosenergo issues, they affect the climate basically, not in Moscow only, but in Sydney or New York, it goes equally. So they affect the global climate similarly, equally, and the humankind cannot close their eyes on those who don't succeed. We should react. This is inevitable. This is why the cross-border tax is the first sign of the change that will move the business forward. So the ESG, its meaning, its significance is, I really understand it. It's a new religion of the 21st century. For me personally, I think that this problem is very important. It's alongside with democracy, with human rights, market economy. So these are the things that are equal. And ESG never falls below these categories. And this is the level from which you should look at what happens in the country. So I try to move on to the response to your question. I have 4 minutes left. I'll try to formulate the idea. We have some good news in Russia, as usual, and some bad news. The good news is that in the recent 2 or 4 months, we had some work with the government and they adopted a number of decisions which are important. Based on the level of the head ministry, it's a high level of responsibility. So far we have not had a person who is responsible. Now we have head of economic development, Maxim Reshetnikov, a methodology center. We have got a first set of documents that has been prepared by the responsible team. I read them and they are very professionally crafted. This is a professional piece of work at the best global level. It all is transparent. Everything works very well. And I think that it's a very interesting and positive news. I wouldn't say positive that the things that have been happening in the recent months. Russian goals for CO2 emissions for 2020, it's 70% as compared to the 90s. It's not just not it's not that it's not ambitious. I can say that it's not comparable to the EU. You know, they have 45% by 2030, but I don't think that we should reach and overrun the EU. I think that we should move on using our own target indicators, and this goal of 70% by 2030 as compared to the 2 days date in 2020. It's not to reduce the emission, but to increase CO2 emissions. So those who back this decision, they say that this is a maximum task. This is something that you really have to. This is the maximum rate, and I think that we have worked for 80 years to work with reduced plans. It was back in the Soviet Union, and I don't think that economy works this way. If you have got a relaxed target, then I don't think that you will be ambitious enough to reach it. So unfortunately, I cannot say that this is positive news, just like many experts who agree with me, both in Russia and abroad. And there are some good news. And one of those good news is that Russia has created a new technology cluster that has been non-existent. It's called the renewable energy. Russia created the real renewable energy sector at the 1st January 2021. It reached 2,400 megawatts, and by 2024, this capacity will increase up to 5,800 megawatts. This is a very important figure. It shows that Russian industry works well, both for solar energy, wind energy. We have got the science to upgrade the technology. We have got very good education in tens of universities in Russia. This is a huge cluster where just 3 years ago, people said that it's unreal. You will not use wind energy in Russia. You have wind in your pockets, not wind in the energy sector. No, guys, we really have got the renewable sector of energy, and it has been created.
Now we are discussing what will happen next in the years 25 and 35 years. So the discussion is not over yet, and let's not be too sad about this now. So we have both good news and bad news. What does it mean? How should we move forward? Of course, everything which has been conceived by the government and the work of the working group, I think it looks reasonable, and they have a good approach with taxonomy, and they work as leaders in the international community. They have good approaches in terms of interest rates reduced for green projects. I only think that we should go deeper here. We should go at a fundamental level of regulation. I believe that it is related to the authorities of the government and the authorities of the central bank. First of all, we have to reform the tax code, as I see it, which would look differently at green and non-green assets. In terms of the central bank, Sergei Shvetsov has rightfully mentioned that special approaches and tools should be developed for people and businesses and green bonds. That's all correct. But the main thing, and of course, the central bank is usually cautious, but they need to consider risk factors when they assess assets. But myself, I am normally more bold in this respect. I believe that the central bank, as the author of the monetary regulation, should review one of the bases of its regulation system, which means technological neutrality. So the central banks have worked on this basis for dozens of years. But today we should understand that for non-green assets there are a lot of serious risks. We understand that coal energy is already an area of risk, and oil companies also understand this. This means that the risks of non-green assets are higher than the green assets. If this is true, this probably means that the regulation of the central bank should be included, that they should include this level of different approaches to industries. And this is the basic work which would really launch the investment attractiveness for many sectors of economy. In this respect, as a summary, I believe that we are at the very beginning now, and effectively it is important to look at our position very frankly, and I have reviewed the analysis prepared with a fresh rating on ESG. MIT has analyzed 76 countries, and we are at the 73 rate. Of course, these are special approaches of imperialists, so to say. But, well, the United States are rated as the 40th. And so I didn't really like this position. This is our starting point. But at the same time, as I have mentioned, we have started moving in the right direction. It is seen in the movement of the government, the central bank, business, and I believe that the year 21 would be either a semi-unused year. Probably we have prepared for a better situation, but we could provide the basis for the Russian Green Deal, and we will we could get the renovated, the reviewed tax code and the reviewed approach to provisioning for commercial banks. And this would be a fundamental shift in the structural basis of the Russian economy in general. So probably if we were drinking, I would propose a toast for the second approach, but we are not drinking, and I would like to tell you as independent directors to make all the efforts to get there for our country and for the further generations of Russia. That's it. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Anatoly Borisovich, for this global view. Effectively, the start of the 73rd position is quite significant, and this way we could make a very good efforts and results. Thank you for noting ambitious approaches and goals of the country, and we will discuss ambitious goals of specific businesses. And speaking about country approach, I would like to give the floor to Alexander Vedyakhin, who represents the biggest financial institution of Russia and Europe. Too many titles for us. We know that you have developed the strategy for year 23. How ambitious is your strategy in ESG? What goals have you put, and how your strategy could impact the landscape of sustainable development in the country in general? Thank you, Elena. Following the previous speakers, I could mention that this topic is relevant for everyone. There would be nobody who is spared from this. Everyone would be engaged, including those who are not present here. It is very simple. We all love our planet, our nature, but let's look at this from the practical point of view. The countries which declared their CO2 neutrality for the years 30 and 50 are all European countries, United States this year with Biden in the office, Japan, Korea by the year, and China by the year 60. So that means that about 75% of the global GDP would be engaged in the environmental agenda. What does it mean? Well, they could just declare this, but the fundamental shifts Mr. Chubais has mentioned have already happened in Europe, and they will be happening fast in the United States. As for China, they will do this at their own pace. But anyway, what does this mean for corporations? If a corporation is not consistent and not compliant with those longer-term expectations, this corporation is fundamentally unstable. Again, a corporation which is not compliant with ESG trends is fundamentally unstable. What do investors do? The next logical step. Well, okay, we are not going to invest in a fundamentally unstable corporation. I think that the letter to CEO, which was probably read by everyone, stated that those companies which are not making steps to become carbon neutral by the year 50, they are going to move their investments from such companies. This was mentioned by BlackRock company, which is one of the largest investment companies globally. And this is just one of the decisions. Most other big companies would be doing the same. And by the end of this year, there would be a clear investment paradigm, which would state that those who are not moving to carbon neutrality won't be the the companies we invest in. So that's it. What would the business owners do? Of course, everyone wants to be fundamentally stable, and they also want to get all the money they need. That's why in the year 21, the longest year 22, we would see a parade of declarations about carbon neutrality by year 40, 50, 60, etc. And this will come definitely from the boards of directors. So they would either do this proactively, or management or shareholders would come to them and say, hey guys, we need to do this, otherwise we won't feel comfortable. The agenda is different. We won't get any money if we don't do this. Based on this simple but fundamental prerequisites, I mean the ESG, now I mean the letter E, environment, this means that it would touch everyone. And BlackRock is one of the largest shareholders of Sber, and we are now thinking how should we communicate with one of our largest private shareholders. The other area is social issues. What we could see there. Social responsibility has always been a very trendy thing. We are all socially responsible. Why we either have it or not. The same story, a fundamental stability of a company. If the company is not socially responsible in the modern society, the social license, so-called social license, would be revoked, and consumers would just stop buying their products. There are a lot of examples now. One of the recent examples is WhatsApp or Facebook, when the society believed that the behavior of these companies wasn't compliant with social responsibility, and the companies started losing their value. Again, the social responsibility is a measure to keep the shareholder value for the company. And this is the task, first of all, of the independent directors to mention this. And Mr. Chubais has mentioned this, that on the one hand, it is a shorter term goal for management. Well, owners could have various representations of the reality, while independent directors just have to mention this. And social responsibility is one of the main topics here. Governance means transparency and clear presentation of management. I don't think that in this audience I should comment this, because the institution of independent directors is required for this very purpose, so that the management of the company could be clear to everyone. So these are issues of the agenda which is personally relevant for everyone in this room. Yelena asked me what changes are driven by Sber in the country. Well, look, I'll try to outline some larger projects we have implemented together with our clients and partners. We work with the Ministry of Nature, with Mr. Chubais. We also had a meeting discussing how are we going to work together in the future, and colleagues who are also panel members, and I was happy to work with one of the panelists, and we have discussed this area a lot and continue doing this. So I will probably not mention the plan as such of Sberbank. I'm going to explain the changes in the perception of business by Sber, because it will definitely have an impact on trends which are going to develop in Russia. So these are huge areas, and this makes the market move in certain direction. First of all, we are going to work in in green projects. So renewable energy sources, and I genuinely believe that the discussion mentioned by Mr. Chubais would continue, and we will not only have the green energy but also increase it. We have invested 65 billion rubles in such project in solar energy and wind energy, and we are going to provide more loans in this area, and we are going to provide preferences in the form of better interest rates for green projects. This is important, and this is a great advantage, a notable advantage, when selecting where we should invest. And this is the economic area which shows that the green projects should be the object for investment. And we could help doing this using the price. And our favorite topic with Mr. Chubais here, and we discuss it all the time, and I believe that the situation will change in year 21. We need the normal regulation for banks, for everyone who invests in green instruments. They need to be provided some advantages, and we could get this additional value in this respect.
So in the future, we will not just issue loans. A loan is a loan, but we will have some special instruments, some special conditions for offering loans. We had a 10 billion ruble pilot deal, and the rate was set in accordance with the ESG rating. The better the rating is, the lower the rate is. We have been testing this approach, and we will have more of them. This is not a novelty in the world, but it's a novelty for Russia. We'll keep on doing this. Debt finance, green bonds of Russian railways. It's always an interesting topic. We were the main placing bank, and we had an interesting thing happen to them. They remain green in Russia, but so that you just could understand how profound this matter is, a European fund refused to buy railways, Russian railways, green bonds, because they were not green enough. They said that they transport coal, so they cannot be green. We said, yes, they do. They transport coal. So you have got various levels when the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Russian railways is scope 3, so it's not green. We will not buy these bonds. This security is okay generally, but just take a look how picky can countries be regarding the carbon footprint. We do lots of things. Being a bank, we are a huge institution. We always buy things. We just purchase lots of things, and I'm sure that the companies where you work at, the companies where you preside at the board, they may partner with Sberbank in a certain format. We have got a code on responsible procurement, and we motivate a market of green procurement. So if your company wants to sell something to Sberbank, soon we'll set very significant green criteria for such purchases. I'm sure that will be a trendsetter, but the market will change accordingly. We understand that we'll have to calculate the carbon footprint, and by making green purchases, we will reduce the footprint. So this is not magic, it's just money. Carbon footprint and carbon units are always about money. We try to incentivize private clients to take part in ESG by providing and placing different instruments, private banking clients, some lower tier clients, those who have lower wealth management rankings, they happily invest in ESG funds. This is another trend. People don't want to invest into the traditional economy, they want to go green. Eco Education is another good project together with Lisa, and we plan to continue this, and I'm sure that the whole market will go this way, because one of the questions when you are being evaluated in terms of ESG is, do you provide eco education? Yes or no? Just take a look, try to analyze your company, your corporation, where you preside at the board in terms of ESG rating, and you'll find lots of new things, lots of new insights. We will ensure environmental risks. We are witnessing a very interesting story of Nornickel, so we should take account of it. Environmental risks will grow at a steady pace, and we have an insurance company within our group. We will provide insurance against these risks. We have been working with the Russian Insurance Union actively. We have got topics to discuss. I think that we'll sort things out in 2021. I can say that environmental risk will be very significant. It may be even more serious than earthquakes, fires, and this will be a huge risk, and corporations will have to get insurance. If it happens to you what happened in the north, then I think that your business will have financial troubles. We are reducing the impact on the environment. We have got a very wide representation in this manner. We have been increasing the rate of purchasing green energy, and in the coming years we plan to make about 30% of our energy green. This is an investment window for those who manufacture and produce green energy. About 40% of all waste will be recyclable. We issue cards, plastic cards, and we withdraw old cards. We recycle them and make windows, plastic windows, using these materials. This is not beneficial, but the business generally is ecologically friendly. We reduced the paper consumption. In 2020, we reduced our paper consumption by 742 million sheets, so that you just could see the scope. It's about 60 railroad wagons or 60,000 trees. So we will cut down the CO2 consumption by reducing the number of the materials that we use. This is a very important trend in the market, and an important trend for the partners, for the consumers. This is the change. What I told you about are the main initiatives. We also have got some regional initiatives in this area, and this is a really big playground. Just to save the time, because we have got a very big social agenda, Sberbank Online. I think that most of you have used this. It's the best application for those who have bad eyesight. This is basically a very, very good thing for the disabled people who could perform their own personal transactions. This is a very important agenda, and I think that no one will just left behind, and I will be very happy if this information was useful for you. So I put a note that Sber is an ESG trendsetter. This is a very responsible positioning of your business, definitely. This is the right thing to do. Before we move on to other cases, I'd like to propose you to take part in a short quiz. ESG, from the words to actions. Do you believe that ESG is a driver of real business transformation, or it still remains generally a marketing ruse to create some positive image for Russian businesses? Irina, we give the floor to you, if you don't mind. Irina Bokova, Independent Director of PAO Fosagro. Thank you very much. This is a very interesting question. I think that a part of the answer has been already talked about. Mr. Chubais and Mr. Vidyakhin already spoke about this.
That the ESG is that the ESG is a very transformative measurement for a company. It is all the important factors for analysts, investors, customers, and of course, every company should have a positive image. But this positive image, particularly for global companies, is very much dependent on the strategy, on the very concrete and strong performance, and of course, on the deep commitment to sustainable development. I would just like to add something which I believe is very important. Sustainability, at the end of the day, is the combination of the ecological, environmental, the social, and the economic aspect of a society. And when the Sustainable Development Agenda was adopted, and I can say it because I personally participated in very many of the debates, it was the first time that private sector was a true partner in its elaboration and its adoption, for obvious reasons. None of the 17 development goals can be resolved and can be implemented without the private sector, because the private sector brings growth, brings innovation, and the private sector also has a social purpose in society. When I say the social purpose, I don't mean simply a CRS or a charity, but a responsibility towards society in terms of exactly this sustainable development. Each of the SDGs relies on a very rigorous study on targets, on data, and some of them elaborated once again with the private sector. In businesses, I'm very happy to to listen to what Mr. Chubais just said about the way Russia transforms and looks at these strategies for the future, because it's very important that the private sector adopts, embraces this sustainability. I would say that even now with the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, all the word of the day is building back, but building back better and created economies that are green, sustainable, that are more inclusive. And this is where the role of the private sector is important. The United Nations started with the Global Compact, this global platform for businesses, where now more than 9,000 companies are there. A number of Russian companies, including Fosagro, is among the 30 lead companies there. It started with the 10 principles: human rights, anti-corruption, equality, fight against for the labor rights, but then it enlarges, and now it has embraced the Sustainable Development Agenda. So I believe it's a genuine transformation. It is not simply a marketing kind of a tool. And if it is really based on a true assessment of the environmental impact, of the social impact, of understanding how every company can also contribute to maximizing these positive impacts, and of course minimizing the negative ones, and determine the commitments, and also, I would say, adapts the governance structure within a certain framework, then indeed it will become a true tool of transformation.
Татьяна, что вы об этом думаете?
Tatiana, any ideas? Thank you. Tatiana, your microphone is muted. Thank you. Yes. Greetings to everyone. This is a very interesting session and some bright speeches. If we talk about what happens in Russia, if we talk about what happens in Russian companies, I think that we have got a revolution here. Everybody starts going greenwashing. So let's put a green banner on the company and say everyone that we are green. How do we do this with minimum costs just to look green, to seem green to investors, to seem green to the business community without damaging the company's core business, without making some serious transformations? I have a feeling, I have been watching this process for a long time. The first step usually comes like trying to seem green, but the deeper the company tries to submerge into this agenda, and the stronger they start to get the feedback from the market, from the investors who analyze the first ESG reports. They say that it's not serious, your figures are not convincing, let's prove it using some certain figures, make additional disclosures. I have a feeling that the second or a third phase is when the company starts to understand that a beautiful report is not merely enough. So if you take two people, give them a name of a sustainable department, this will not help you to solve the problem, because generally this is a different paradigm for developing business. This is a different system for corporate governance. And really, in fact, in Russian, we have got a word sustainable. It means something very rigid and fixed, where you nail it and it never goes down. In English, the word sustainable means the non-stop ongoing change and transformation. Although we all have been discussing the targets up to 2030 and the decarbonization deadlines and so on, we see that firstly, these can be overdone. You can take additional results. You can take sped up results. And the whole set of criteria that the companies can transform themselves by has been growing, has been extending, and I don't know either it's good or bad for separate companies. It is impossible to just get with a simple report, which is formal.
It is impossible just show a beautiful picture for the market without touching all the internal things going in the company. And in this sense, the companies, going back to your question, those Russian companies who started this movement earlier have already approached this understanding, and some of them have a clear understanding that they will need to change somehow the whole business model. It is a very deep transformation and a huge effort. It is most likely a review of the strategy and a strong reorganization of the corporate structure, corporate governance structure, and the whole mechanism of decision making. Because if the old view to the world we are used to at the level of the country, that we need to show GDP growth or EBITDA growth at the level of the company, so the measure everyone is tracing and which is the basis for all decisions. So it is just the economy. Now, when we look at the pre-investment project, any plans or programs, we need to keep in mind a much more complicated metric. If we may show it primitively, it is just ESG. But when we look deeper, we see that it has a lot of different aspects, and decision-making becomes much more complicated when we make such an integrated exercise rather than those things that corporate structures are used to. That's why I believe, as Anatoly Borisovich has mentioned, are at the very beginning of our path. There are some good new signs and great examples at the corporate level, but we all need to go through this school. And I agree with Alexander Alexandrovich that none of those who attend this conference is not able to avoid this agenda. Tatiana, do you think that we have already overcome this greenwashing stage in Russia? Yes, I think yes. It is just the matter of transformation or greenwashing. As Alexander has mentioned, that corporate governance now is already implemented in Russia for many years, and it looks quite good. When we mention greenwashing, it is mostly related to the S factor from a ESG abbreviation. If we look at this matter, if you believe that if you perform ESG good, then your company will be profitable and your people would be probably more loyal, more happy, and consumers would buy more from you because you have a great image and a good corporate governance system. Just because there is some pressure from a regulator or rating agencies or from this fund in New York, which calls you every week and asks, why are you not green yet? So if you believe in this and make such decision, like we did, like about 2 years ago, when we thought where we are and what should we done next. And we have done a lot of good things, but we haven't disclosed this because it was just a part of our corporate culture. So we decided to systemize this and disclose this to everyone, talking about what we do. So a couple of things which could be included in deciding whether it is a transformation or greenwashing. So we need the support at the top. The CEO and management should be engaged in this agenda. If it is just one person sitting in his office and thinking about this alone, this would never become a real thing. And the second thing is that it should be integrated in all business processes. And if we ask how many people work in ESG, if I tell 4 people, everyone understands that it doesn't work. It is just nice to have, but in reality, it has no impact on business processes. But if I answer that we have 300,000 people engaged in ESG. This means that every person, every employee thinks about this and wants to be a good corporate citizen. So this is a real transformation. Another thing is that we need to have a clear purpose and objective. And I believe that there could be different objectives. And if our objective is just 2050, to be carbon neutral by 2050, this has no effect on our people because they believe that in 2050 I won't be here, so it's not about me. That's why we need to have longer-term goals, but we also need to have other things. We have our time frame for 2025. It is just 4 years, and for our objectives, which we put to our company for a year and a half ago. So this should change the situation. As Tatiana has mentioned, I believe that a lot of people started it as a greenwashing, but it is moving forward now. And it doesn't mean that we don't need PR value, we just want transformation. Well, everyone wants it, and it is important for PR and GR value. Thank you. Yes, Jyrki, and probably another question. We have mentioned that a new generation, millennials, I'm a millennial. Yes, probably we are all millennials this way or another. So it is important for younger generation and us as the representatives of this generation where we work and who is our employer, what products we consume, which services we get. Could you see this at the consumers of Magnit chain, their wish to consume more environmental friendly goods? And is it important for them that such products and services are provided by responsible companies? It is a very good question, and we think a lot about this because we, as retailers, have to be relevant for our buyers. So that's why we need to offer the services and products and goods which would be relevant to our clients. This means that, speaking about ESG, we cannot go too fast ahead, and because probably some consumers think about goods they are going to buy in 3 years. So we could educate our clients in the area of sustainability so that they could think more about this and be more aware of sustainable development. But again, we have to be a little bit ahead of our clients, but not very much ahead of them. So if we look at different surveys and focus groups which we make, you get this probably a little bit too optimistic view. What people are saying and what people are buying probably do not coincide always. So sometimes when you ask a person about green things, everybody is for it. But then they come to the shop and buy the cheapest product, which is probably not very green. And this is related to the economic situation of families. But there is a difference between the answers in surveys and the reality. So we shouldn't be too optimistic. If we look at what could be required for Russian clients, the most important thing is health. People need healthy goods. They want to be more healthy, and they need more goods which would show them that they are healthy, they are green. The second area is that we look, which is important for Russian consumers, is plastic. It was a fashionable thing that everybody started talking about plastic and being a big problem. And the third thing is the waste. And briefly, in summary, speaking about health, it is a huge topic for us, and we'll try to educate clients. We have also published our corporate magazine, Magnet, in November last year, which explains how the people could have a healthy life, not just about food, but also about mental health. And so there are a lot of interesting and good information there. And we also have the loyalty program, which would include such information to our clients. And we also work a lot with our suppliers to increase the number of goods we sell, which help our consumers to be more healthy. As for the plastic, this is, of course, important for suppliers who produce such goods, but for us, it is also relevant. For example, plastic bags. We have 16 million buyers every day, and you could count how many plastic bags we sell. And we work hard now on making these bags from reused plastic, recycled plastic. Now we are going to increase it by 30% this year and then continue working on this. And this year we would probably pilot almost 100% or even 108% of recycled plastic. These things are important for clients. As for waste, we also have a huge program to decrease the waste. Here, we need some improvements in regulation, in legislation, which is not fully developed in Russia in this area, how this waste could be used, and this should be developed by various ministries. But it is important for many people, and its importance is only growing, and we cannot survive without taking this into account. The next question is about the role of the board of directors, and we have here directors and of many Russian companies. What's the role of board of directors and your personal role in development of the culture, of sustainable culture in your companies? Thank you.
This question, because I do believe that the independent directors and the board of directors play a critical role in this. On one side, of course, it's to set the right strategy, something that we in Fosagro we did already in 2019 when we adopted for the first time in our strategic document until 25 a chapter on sustainable development, and then we started to implement it. Actually, it was at that time when the CEO Andrei Guriev proposed that a special committee on sustainable development, which I'm very honored to chair in the board, start to work. The board actually sets all the standards, all the strategies, environmental, the safety, the social responsibility, the goals, and then of course it's a very important question about the monitoring. And I would say that setting the SDG priorities and also looking at some of the targets and constantly revisioning these targets is also extremely important. Even we went to changing our corporate governance framework. I think this is also important. We recently decided to adjust the role of the Health, Safety, Environmental Committee on climate matters and the role of the Remuneration and Human Resource Committee on human rights and gender equality, diversity and inclusion. And it was based on the strategy of the company, the climate strategy of the company that was adopted during the last meeting of the board, and also the wastewater strategy. So for the first time, actually, our board has considered that we have to assess companies' corporate culture from the point of view of sustainable development goals, sustainability, the fact that we have reviewed and adopted at the board level also the responsibility of the company, which affects 11 of the 17 sustainable development goals. Actually, the last meeting, we added climate change there. And we also decided that setting our own trends of the company, that we adopted a plan for a low carbon transition by 2028. All this is setting, I would say, high goals for the company. And I'm happy that it is embraced, of course, in close cooperation with the management and accompanied, which I think is important, related to our discussion with the communication plan with the employees, so that they also embrace the sustainability as a corporate culture. So just to sum it up, I think the boards indeed play a critical role when they set the strategy and the targets of companies in terms of SDG Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Спасибо, Ирина. Ну, собственно, результаты не заставили себя ждать.
So we really got some tangible results. Fosagro has stabilized its position between the global agriculture and chemical companies. They managed to boost their position in the ratings. So in terms of analytics, you have been one of the leaders in this rating. And really the ESG goals that Fosagro have set for themselves as key targets are very, very purposeful. They have got some quantitative indicators for the next several years. Irina, thank you very much for your information. Tatiana, I have got a very similar question to you. So what's your role and the role of directors and the boards of the companies where you work as a member? I know you have experience of working in Russian company Novatek and Schlumberger. If I may, I would also like to add an additional question. So if we take the ambition that we have discussed, do you see any difference between the goals and targets that companies and boards set for themselves in terms of the sustainable targets and so on? How important is this agenda? Thank you for the question. I wanted just to give a small addition to what Irina said. She gave a very bright description of all the activities that the board of directors should make in order to promote ESG agenda. In my experience, I have another magic thing that would quickly change the attitude towards this idea on all levels. It's what about Alexander spoke about today. Managers live from one bonus to the next bonus. So as soon as ESG indicators will become KPIs for the managers and the CEO, the change will be coming soon. So yes, I think that everybody should really understand this. This is a very good way to promote this idea, and it works at the level of the state civil servants. Some countries really apply this approach. This might be a powerful driver. As for the climate targets set by various companies, in my companies, for example, Schlumberger, which is a family business of 90 years of history, they have been very responsible about what they say, and they prefer to keep silence instead of doing some statements that are unachievable. The same thing can be said about Novatek. So they would rather try to be wary about public statements. They prefer not to give the promises they cannot fulfill. So their corporate cultures are very similar, and both companies did some great piece of work before disclosing and publishing their climate targets. Both companies have got 2030 horizon for these plans. This is a carbon business because they are oil service companies. Novatek produces gas condensate. So the means that in the next 30 years that they can use to decarbonize completely this segment of economy, all these technologies and CO2 storage and retention, developing hydrogen and commercialization of hydrogen and some other areas, they basically require a lot of technological research. So it's about TRL 3 or 4. There's a lot of work and a lot of budget for R&D to spend, and it takes really a lot of time to approve and to implement these technologies. This is why companies try to act very cautiously, but when they finally make a statement, Schlumberger joined the Science Based Targets Initiative. This is a scientifically approved targets that are really backed by well-checked methodologies. It's not just making a random promise that we can do everything well by 2050. We don't know how to do this, but we promise it. Some companies think that it is not reasonable to make statements like this. Novatek calculated each project down to the last digit, so down to each solar panel. They know how they will comply with the climate targets by 2030. So as compared to other companies, when they say we will reduce it by 50, by 60, Novatek have it by 7 or 10%, just small cutbacks for CO2, for methane. So it's clear what they have behind these targets, and requires very powerful investments, and this will drive very significant change. Honestly, this practice is very, very understandable and close to me. Maybe it's not too ambitious, maybe it's not too promising, all or nothing, but still they have got a very good understanding how to make sure that you achieve the specified result. Both Schlumberger and Novatek have a colossal piece of work regarding the new energy, and Schlumberger made an announcement in January. They said that they plan to create a separate division for the new energy. They make great investments in lithium, in hydrogen, in thermal pumps, geothermal energy. So basically, this is how they diversify their business. For a company that has been working in the oil market for 90 years, this step is big. Novatek have not made any public announcements, but the work is immense. So there is more similarity than difference between these companies, and I think we should really understand, and we emphasize this when we communicate with investors. They are becoming really tired of the net zero statements, and they say, okay, it's great. Yes, you have got very good promises. So show us something in the next 12 months, what you did to achieve the promise. So all the statements, all the announcements that you make will have to be reported on in the ESG reports. You have to think a lot when setting the goals. Yes, any actions should be confirmed by, every word should be confirmed by actions. So thank you, Tatiana. I think we had a very interesting discussion. Before we make a break, let's make another quiz. So if we take the expenses and the benefits of implementing the ESG practices and principles for your company, or maybe for a Russian company, like let's take a random portrait of a Russian company. Do you think currently, is it a carrot or a stick? Anatoly Borisovich, Victoria, we can rephrase this for the country, in the context of a country. Do you think for the country, for the state, ESG is a carrot or is it a stick? Let me start, if I may. I think that it's neither, actually. I think that the majority of Russian companies have no value about this. It doesn't mean, or it's about greenwashing that you have discussed. For advanced companies, this is the real future. And there are many companies like this. I was really surprised. Russian Railways, Sibur, Gazpromneft, Sberbank, other companies, they have made a big progress. And those who make progress, I don't think that they have the right target. It's both carrot and both a stick. If we limit ourselves down to greenwashing, you will lose a lot of capital in 3 years. But if you really leverage this seriously, like our colleagues said today, this is a good way to get another level of capital access and a way to develop your business efficiently. Thank you. Alexander? I'll try to give my version. It's a different reality. So it has both pros and cons. If you comply with the agenda, you will have a carrot. If you don't, you'll get a stick. So you have to comply. It's simple. Irina, Tatiana, any ideas from you?
Quite obvious that the future is in the sustainability, and probably this is the carrot. If you don't adapt, if you don't change, if you don't move, then you will gradually lose investment, you will lose market share, you will lose image, and the company will become obsolete. I think what is very important is to say that sustainability, ESG, is a good business opportunity, and this is the future of the company. And it has to be embraced, it has to be adopted as a strategy, and it has to be also introduced in all the different levels of the corporate culture and the different projects. I think it's important to set the strategy and then the targets and move on.
Спасибо.
Thank you. So if I may, from the part of the regulator, I would rephrase the question. It's not about the sticks or carrots. It's about whether you have to do it or you do not have to do it. So there is the need for this, both from institutional investors and from the companies. And so we'd like to send an inquiry for institutional investors. We'd like to say to them that they have to take account of this. We tried to formulate this target. Last year, we developed some recommendations for implementing responsible investment principles for institutional investors. Another big step for us, it relates to company disclosures. And it's really about how the quality of the operations and the strategic thinking of the boards, what they really do. Our audience is basically our independent members of the boards. And we believe that this is really the matter that you and me, will have to face in the next few years. I think we heard a lot of interesting today. Some people say that good things have been done, but nobody talks about this. Companies do this, but they don't publish what they do often, and they give no milestones, no landmarks. It is not very clear how to disclose information, and we try to help the boards. We try to develop some guidelines, some methodical guidance that you could use in your life. I hope that in the first quarter of this year, the first one will be published about ESG disclosures. Being the central bank of Russia, we understand that we fully embrace the ESG agenda. We are ready to go shoulder to shoulder with companies to give all possible support. We are just the same organization as all of you are. We try to make ourselves green too. So I think that our example will be like a landmark, like an orientation point in what you do. Victoria, thank you. Tatiana. If I may, I have a couple of words. Everything what Victoria just talked about is about changing the rules of the game. I would like just follow Mr. Chubais. I would not take the stick or carrot concept. It's like just changing the rules of the game. We used to play football, and now we play some different game, hockey. So those who try to score the ball into the goal, they will not be in the game. Some people already embrace this. Some will spend more time thinking about this. Some will try to resist it. But the change is there. The rules have changed, and as the companies reflect on this and turn it to action, they will get some benefits. Because if they spend 10 more years playing football, I think that would be a catastrophe for everyone.
Jyrki, what about you?
Да, я согласен.
I agree, and I think that both words in Russian, it was difficult for me to understand the proverb, but I understood it was about carrot and stick. So I believe that both play an important role. If you look positively at ESG, you treat it as a carrot and you think about opportunities you could probably increase staff loyalty or consumers loyalty. So then it is more of a carrot than a stick. The second interesting opportunity is that it almost requires cooperation between the companies within a country or within an industry, because nobody could address all the issues within ESG. That's why it is a very good thing which helps all the companies in their cooperation. The third thing, which is probably not directly related to this thing, but it is more of what Victoria has mentioned. It's that we are trying to think of how we design the non-financial reporting. What are we going to disclose? Unfortunately, right now, there are dozens of rating agencies, and each of them would come and tell us, if you are not working with us, we have 40 trillion funds lost and so on. So every rating agency requires all kinds of information, and there are shareholders and all the funds which perform their own research, and they send their own surveys. So all the work which could be done for standardization of this process, what is ESG? Because right now the situation is much better than some years ago, but anyway, there is no standard and accurate definition of what is ESG. And of course, there are a lot of various regulators working on this, but I believe that the central bank has a very important role to play, and we wish you all the success. Thank you, Jyrki. We are almost done, and we are going by the agenda, although we have no time for Q&A session. Colleagues, thank you for a very interesting discussion. It was a great pleasure for us, for me and for the audience in the room and online. Thank you very much.
Спасибо, Елена.
Передаю вам слово.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you, speakers. We need to move forward. The time is flying and the session is very interesting. I celebrated this new year at the volcano of Erisabo. So dreaming about new trips and travels and see very interesting places all over the world is probably close to all of us. Today, we have a very unusual guest who makes the dreams about travel reality. Nikolai Savelyev, the founder of Poseidon Expeditions company. For over 20 years, Nikolai organizes unique expeditions to the North and South Poles. Nikolai is here. He has built a successful global companies, which is now one of the largest international tourist companies which work in tourism in Arctic and Antarctic. Our greetings to Nikolai. Just a couple of words. Sustainable development, as our speakers mentioned, discussing it without discussing environment is impossible. The scientists now say that the Arctic and the Antarctic are the lighthouses which give us their focus of and show us how the climate and weather in the Earth is changing. You have visited those areas many times, so please share your ideas with us. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I will tell you now about some very pleasant things you could relax and enjoy. What I'm going to tell you is organization of trips to very far ends and difficult to reach areas of the world, the poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic. It's quite a young business. I will tell you how it appeared, how it emerged only nearly 30 years ago. And it is strange to mention, but it was related to the end of the Soviet Union. It's another story, and if you are interested, I could tell you. Currently, we have only about 15 companies who are engaged in this business. We are somewhere in the middle, 5, or we are rated at the 5th or 6th level, but demand and interest to such trips is growing. I will introduce myself and how this idea was born. The point is, I was born in Siberia, but when I was 3 years old, my parents moved to Novorossiysk at the Black Sea, where I grew up. And so I didn't see a lot of snows. Who is familiar with those regions? You know, we have a lot of winds, but almost no sun. That's no snow. That's why I didn't know anything about skis or snowballs. So I started in Marina Academy, and I worked in Murmansk Sea Shipping Company. So this was the first time when I saw the icebreakers, nuclear icebreakers, and when I witnessed their snow, all their interesting things which you could see in the north. So for about 25 years, I work in the Arctic and Antarctic in this business, and I liked it more and more. Just 6 months ago, I met Alexander in the village of Fyodor Konyukhov. A great place. If you haven't visited it, you should go. So we started discussing such expedition cruises and who is interested in this. And while talking, we started discussing environmental issues, all the changes. And I told him, I see this with my own eyes. I could compare the situation 20 years ago and right now. We effectively see the global warming. This is a trend. Everybody is talking about this, but how is it expressed? What's going on? The point is, the Arctic is the kitchen of the whole weather in the globe. In the Arctic, you could see how is this emerging, and I will tell you. I will give you some more details. Expedition cruises are quite interesting and funny and enjoyable. We have such kind of events. We work for half a year in the Antarctic in this great ship, Sea Spirit. We go through the Argentine, about 10-15 cruises. Then we go to the Arctic and work in the Arctic for 6 months. It's England, Faroe Islands, Iceland, Ireland, and Franz Josef Land. These are quite not well-known territories which attract people more and more. I will show you a short film how it's going on. So we have reached the North Pole for 57 times on the most powerful icebreaker. So we have seen the beautiful land of Antarctica. We have seen a lot of whales and walruses. We swam in the North Pole, and yes, we could do this. We have overcome the ice, which was 4 meters thick. In Greenland, you could see the very beautiful northern lights, and in the Antarctic, about 6 million penguins. discover the polar world together with us. So this is a promo video, so we didn't have another film. So global warming could be seen. You could see a huge area of ice here. So 20 years ago, when we visited this, there was no such division of ice. It was the smooth area, and now we could see some divisions. It is divided and separated, and you could see how it is going on. In the past, to see such a thing, it happened once in a week or once in a month, and now it happens every day. We know about this, and of course, we take certain measures of precaution. In the year 1999, we went to the Northern Pole, or the Yamal icebreaker, and approaching the area, we had some breakage. So it is a very, it was a very heavy detail which was broken. And now we move to the Northern Pole with 5 or 6 knots, and the ice becomes thinner, although it could be still 2 or 3 meters thick, but it is very soft now. You touch it and it goes down. And in the past, it was there were huge pieces of ice. Now it is very difficult to find this kind of pieces of ice.
So why these expedition cruises are so interesting, and why are they becoming increasingly popular in the world in the recent 10 years? All global discoveries ended in the end of the 19th, in the beginning of 20th century. The world was open and there were no uncharted territories except for the poles, the Arctic and the Antarctic. It's a very cold place. The conditions are not fit for living. This is a battle for being the first. Who reaches the North Pole, the South Pole first, was very, very active, and nations were battling with each other. We all know that officially it was an American citizen who reached the pole, but actually he didn't. And some people know this. And this has been officially proved. Amundsen was late. He reached the southern pole. He came back home as a hero. And all these areas of the world are very remote. And it's very hard to reach them, even today. And as the world is becoming more and more transparent and accessible, a voyage to this region is somewhat a privilege. The first thing driving people to go there, making them eager to get to such uncharted places as the Arctic and Antarctic, is the history. The Franz Josef Archipelago is a very interesting place. We decided to arrange a tour there of a club. It is unprecedented for the history. We have got 100 people on the ship, 100 people of Russian people staying there. We work in various countries, and the priorities are Australians, Germans, Switzerland. Recently, Chinese people have been traveling a lot, and if not the pandemic, I think that they would reach the Americans in this field. There are not many Russians among the crew, about 5 or 6 or 8%, but we get more Russians, but still this number is not big. The Franz Josef Archipelago is a very interesting place of the world, and I think that internationally it's even more well known than for the Russians. This is our territory. You know the novel by Kaverin, Two Captains, and the main protagonists are the people who discovered this place, who stayed there. The Arctic has no decay bacteria. Everything that was constructed 100 years ago has remained unchanged. This is a shack, a small house, where this ship was crushed by ice in the end of the 19th century, but the shack where the crew lived is still there. There are many places like this on this archipelago. Why is not even Spitsbergen, which is not far from there? Why is it Franz Josef Land? This is the closest archipelago to the North Pole, and the race for reaching the North Pole started from this archipelago. So now we still have the remaining features, the remaining things of the expeditions, the well-known expeditions, that you can even just touch if you be very gentle, though. This information is well known, and you can go to the internet, you can get the information there. So it's a good chance to get to the remote nook of the world, and it really motivates people. The second reason why people want to go there is the wildlife. You will not find as many white bears, narwhals, whales, and seals, white seagulls that are almost extinct. You can find them only there at the Franz Josef Archipelago. This is not a zoo. We do not give you a guarantee that you'll see 5 bears, 25 bears, but the experience shows that in the history of our trips in 22 years, we always had them. So maybe it's not always that you can see the bear so close, but it's about 15 meters. You can see the bear, you can see the glaciers. So we have a photo at the beginning of the 20th century and the current photography at the same place. You see the difference. On the left top, in the left top corner, you see the glacier, and the same glacier has reduced in modern days. So yes, this is what happens quickly. This is what happens very, very dynamically. A long time ago, scientists said that there will be no ice in summer by 1950. Right now, they say that by 2040, there will be no ice there. You see, in the lower part, there is a glacier that has almost vanished. So the glaciers go down, they melt, and they go to the Gulf Stream. And what happens to the Gulf Stream? It's becoming colder. And why? Why is it important? The Gulf Stream is the determining factor of the climate in Europe. This is what we see. Fires in Europe, hot summers. In Russia, we have got cold summers. And take a look what winters we have now. This is the trend. I'm not a scientist, but we have been working with scientists from various countries, with various universities. They have lots of arguments, and when they get there, when they see it with their own eyes, they make some certain personal conclusions. The fourth reason why people go there, and it's the biggest one, I already started talking about this, is networking and communication. Why are cruises are different from an expedition? When you have a cruise, there are bars, restaurants, crowds of people, drinking, dancing, enjoying yourselves, and going off the board in 7 days. An expedition cruise is a different thing. An expedition is some new experience, new knowledge, and maybe some new information that will help us to ponder a little bit. The fact is that, of course, you know, there is an official position. There are many points of view regarding the global climate change, about the warming. But still, there are scientists who can officially state that things are changing. They can tell you unofficially that the official position is different from what happens in fact. So when you talk to these people, sitting at the bar, having some glass of some good wine, you can ask a scientist, "Hey, Steve, is that true, your story that you told to that pal? So I read this, I saw this, and Steve will take a look at you and he'll ask you, where did you get it from? We're Russians, we are we look for information." So, and the scientist will tell you, "I will tell you this, but that was not me. And if they ask me again, I'll say that I don't know this." And he starts to tell you his own story. You think about it and you try to find out what is real and what is not. What you see on the surface is not always true. So after this journey, you will come back a different person in a good way. You get new knowledge, you get new experience. We have got many journeymen who travel with us for years, many of them for decades, return to various broadcasts, to various live shows. And we had a Russian traveler. He told me, "Nikolai, you spoke about this. I decided to go there. And I can tell you that I spent many years and a lot of money on trifle things. Now I know that there's a different life. There are different people, there are different opinions existing in the world. I have changed it all in my life. And of course, it was some good thing for me to hear. We really put our soul into these journeys. We spend a lot of time on finding people. We work with universities globally, and the professor I just told you about, he's from the Berkeley University, California. Currently, the Franz Josef cruise that will take place in summer 2022, so it's 18 months to prepare. It's very difficult to get ready for this. We have been working with some Nobel laureates, with scientists. We try to find the right crew of lecturers, experts. We want to make them to provide various ideas on this, and you can make the conclusions yourself based on your education, based on your aspirations, based on your world picture. To sum it up, I'll show you a short movie, just about 1 minute. It will show how it happens. We are born out of a mystery, and we go away in the mystery too. We have the will and we have the understanding, but everything what happens around distracts us from the real life. Sometimes we forget to live and we forget to love. When you come to this world, you have an opportunity to make a choice. You choose the freedom, you choose to take your own path, like the great people who were before you, to face the reality. The future will come. You should live in the current day. You should live today. Try to feel the real beat of life. When you make a choice, you choose freedom of communication, the freedom of being solitary, the freedom of finding something more that you have ever expected. You can take your own choice and select the tempo of your life. Don't try to hurry. You can be different. You can have contradictions in yourself. When you look at your goal, you can stop to remember the moment. You just cannot plan this. Life becomes experience, bringing new meetings for you. Life is beautiful because you can dream as you live, and you can be yourself. The Arctic only looks cold. Select the impressions that will give you fuel for the whole life. So that's it. I hope that I managed to captivate you in these minutes, to give you some emotions that I have felt during the journeys. I still have got 7 minutes on my hands. So yes, but I will wrap up. I will wrap up. Yes, we have got a very interesting idea with Alexander. This is a very good program. This will be the first all-Russian crew to the northernmost countries, to the northernmost shores of Russia, the historical place which is globally well known. We'll work on this. In August 2022. Welcome on board. I will be happy to see you all.
Thank you. Just a couple of words I would like to add. We actually, in our association, actively work on a completely new form, which would have a form of a summer expedition to Franz Joseph Land, and we plan to combine the business part with the opportunity to research the northern area of Russia, and it would be a unique opportunity, and we'll be able to formulate our opinion on what's going on with the climate, with the earth, what is waiting us ahead. And the main thing probably is the communication in a great group or community. And you see the dates on the screen. Please include it in your calendar. You have enough time to plan, and if you have questions, you should contact Lyudmila Vysotska, but I think all of you know her. I would also add that it would be an unbelievable adventure, and none of the professional organizations has implemented such idea. But I think this is the place which should be visited at least once in your lifetime. Thank you, Nikolai, for your story, for your emotions. Colleagues, we have a break now. We will see you back at 6:30 at their ceremony of inauguration of congratulations the directors.